Alright, step one, drain your old fluid out of your transmission pan. Step two is going to be actually dropping your transmission pan. These are 10 millimeter. You are going to need a gear wrench or box wrench for the back couple bolts there. Go ahead. Just drop it straight down. Pull your filter out. And let it drain. Make sure you get your old transmission filter seal out. They like to get stuck up in there. The gasket is reusable. If you want to get a new gasket, you can. Make sure you clean it really good. A little bit of fuzz on the magnet is normal. You've got all kinds of like reflective bits in your transmission fluid, you might have problems, but a little bit of fuzz on the magnet is perfectly normal. Alright, you're going to want to pull your external can filter housing off with a 22 millimeter on an impact gun. Do not use a 3/4 inch, do not use any other size. It's got to be a 6-point 22 millimeter, otherwise you will strip it and break it. Then pull that down.
Pull it down.
Yeah. The next step is optional but highly recommended. What we're going to do is blow air up through that little nipple there. That's the return side of the filter housing, and basically by blowing up through that hole we're going to force all the fluid from here to the transmission. It's going to force that into the transmission, and all the fluid from here back around through the cooler and back, that's going to come out this square hole on the other side. So our entire transmission cooler is going to be drained out that square hole. It's going to make a huge mess, but that's going to back flush. It's going to back purge the entire transmission cooler line. So that's a good, probably 1.5 quart, 2 quarts. Go ahead and reinstall your filter canister. You can just leave the filter out of it because basically all it's going to do, that's your filter bypass right there. All it's saying is a 10% flow, and it's whatever flow can manage to get through the filter and up into that little nipple. It is almost completely useless. It's not doing much of anything at all. So I would recommend not using a filter in there. You can put one in there, but it's just going to sit there and not really do much. So let's go ahead and put the filter canister housing back on. If you want to, you can drop the magnet back in it, or you can leave it out. It's Pretty much up to you.
Spring down or up?
Spring down. And it's best to always use an impact wrench on this, even for tightening it. Just give it a couple wraps with the impact gun. You don't want to go too tight because then it'll be hard to get off, but just a couple quick wraps. Should be good. You can come back and check for leaks later and then tighten it more if you need to. This is the updated 08 filter pan. Mark gave it a pretty paint job there. Part number is 8C3Z-7A194-B. And our new filter assembly. Much better filter. You can see the pleats in there. It's pleated all the way down. It's not just a screen like the old style filter. It is a full 100% flow pleated filter. And then you got your bypass filter here is kind of like a normal filter. So if it ever becomes too clogged to actually suck through that, the bypass opens up and then you got a normal transmission filter. But that's what you want right there. Those nice pleats to filter out all the contaminants. Part number on the filter is FT-180-8C3Z-7A098-D. These are kind of pricey, like 38 bucks, but it's worth it. You want to use some brake cleaner and a rag and go all the way around the gasket surface. A lot of gunk likes to collect up around the lip of the pan, and you don't want all of that dirt and stuff falling into the pan when you put the new one in. Poured a little bit of new transmission fluid into the new pan, and I'm just going to dip the filter in there to fully coat that seal and make sure that seal gets plenty of brand new clean oil on it. Install your new filter. Just wiggle up in there, and it'll just sit up against the solenoid body, and it actually gets held in place by the pan. And go ahead and throw a couple bolts in. Hold it in place. You want to start all the bolts by hand. You can snug them up with a ratchet, but you want to get them all started by hand. Now that we've got them all started by hand, we'll go ahead and snug them up. You want to hold the pan up while you snug them up. You don't want to torque them right now, just snug them up.
Just hitting every other one.
Once you get them all snugged down, go ahead and torque them down to 11 foot-pounds. Alright, so the basics of our homebrew flush system here is we have disconnected this line. This is the return side of the transmission line cooler. Looking under your transmission, it's the one on the passenger side, and it goes up into the return side of the filter housing there. So we just undid the hose clamp, disconnected the line right there at that hard line, put a little piece of 1/2 inch hose on there, and that's going into a PVC valve that we're just leaving shut off. You could use any valve you want here. And in fact, you could even use a cap on that side. We're just using this to block the flow because you are going to get some fluid trying to escape out the return side of that filter housing. So we're capping that side of the return line, and the actual return side here, we've got that going into another PVC shutoff with a hose that will then go into our bucket. So we're gonna go ahead and fill up the transmission with 3 gallons of brand new fluid. We're gonna leave this open when we first start the truck. That'll allow anything that's in the lines between the transmission, pump, torque converter, everything in between there and the line. It'll flush that out real quick, and then we're gonna close this valve, and then we're gonna run the transmission with the brand new fluid in tow haul mode, trying to lock up the torque converter to get that new fluid to really get in all the different parts of the pump and the transmission. And then once we're satisfied that, we'll just slowly open this and we'll let this drain until it stops running fluid. As soon as it stops running fluid, we're going to shut it off immediately. Alright, we've got 3 gallons of brand new transmission fluid in the pan. We're going to go ahead and start the truck and leave this valve open. That'll flush anything that's in between the pump and in the cooler lines. Alright, our transmission fluid temperature at 112. You see that? And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in tow haul mode, and we're just going to hold the brake down and cycle through the gears. Basically what this is doing is it's forcing all the new fluid through all the gear passages, through all the solenoids, and through the torque converter. And what you can even do is kind of power brake it a little bit if you really want to lock up the torque converter. Or if you have a PTO set up and you can manually lock up your torque converter, you go ahead and do that. But basically the idea is you're just like fully flushing everything through the transmission into the new fluid. And technically you can do that as much as you want, but it doesn't take much to get it all up in there. Go ahead and stop. We'll go ahead and we're going to open up this valve. We're going to let it drain until it stops. As soon as that stops, pull it in. I'll holler at you. The phone battery died right as we were doing that, but basically we waited until the flow out of the pump slowed to pretty much trickle, and then we immediately killed the engine, shut the valve, and what we did is we went ahead and refilled the transmission with 10 quarts of fluid. That should get you right back up to right in the desired level there, but we reserved 2 quarts to top us up. If we need to, we can drain a little bit to get back to our desired level. But basically this is exactly the same way that a transmission shop or an auto shop is going to flush your transmission. The only difference is that they would have heated or non-heated fluid coming in through this return line, going right back into the pan, getting mixed in. So even a full bona fide hot flush transmission done at SuperDuty service, you still got old fluid being mixed with fluid in the pan. So no matter what, you're getting that fluid mixture going on. There's a lot of people that say that this homebrew flush method isn't really that effective, but it's basically doing exactly the same thing as a full transmission flush is doing, because you got fluid coming in one side and you got fluid coming out the other. Either way you got the fluid mixing. So It's good enough. What we end up using is 22 quarts. A full flush is going to exchange 19 quarts. So we're using, you know, an extra 3 quarts, but you can do it at home, and it's just as good. It's a lot better than doing draining 2 quarts every 10,000 miles thing. That's just a waste of fluid, if you ask me. This is doing a full bona fide flush. The best flush you can do at home, getting every single passage clean out with new fluid, draining out that fluid, and now we've got brand new fluid in there again. So it's almost as good as a full bona fide transmission flush. I forgot to mention, you want to drain the remaining fluid out of the transmission pan before you put the new fluid in for the final time. Basically, that middle 3 gallons of flush fluid, we drained it first out of the pump into the bucket, and you want to drain out of the pan, get that out, and then you're going to fill up your 3 new gallons or your 10 more quarts. And then I went ahead and reconnected our lines here. You can see it's the one on the passenger side. And went ahead and reconnected it, put the hose clamp back on, and put that clamp back on, and now we're good to go. Now we'll just turn the truck on and cycle through the gears again and check our fluid level, and then top up as needed.